Helpful for life.
To wrap it up, let's talk about two materials in a lot of kitchens that need a little bit of extra attention when they're being cleaned: cast iron and wood. First, let's talk about cast iron. When cleaning and maintaining cast iron, there's two main things you need to think about: protecting the seasoning and preventing it from rusting. As a reminder, that seasoning that we're talking about is a polymerized layer of oil on the pan. Ooh, sounds fancy, huh? That's just a smart way of saying that there's a thin layer of oil that has bonded to the metal. And this can give cast iron some of those non-stick properties that we like to have in our cookware. And as you might want to imagine, we want to protect those non-stick properties as well as we can, so we want to avoid damaging that seasoning that we're talking about. So the first step to clean the cast iron pan is to get out any of the excess food. And as a reminder, if you have a lot of oil in your pan, please don't dump it down your drain. Future you will thank you. If you have some food that is stuck on there and needs a little bit of help, just grab a little scraper. However, do not use metal when you're scraping because it could remove that seasoning. There are some metal tools that are made specifically for cast iron, like the chainmail scrubber you see on your screen now. If you get that tool, it'd be kind of cool. I mean, who doesn't want to have some chainmail in their kitchen? However, if you don't get that tool, you can use a wooden spatula, a plastic spatula, or even the back of a scrub brush. Those should all work pretty well. Once you have all the excess food out of the pan, now comes the time for washing. You can use a little bit of soap while you're doing this, but there are some soaps that can take away that seasoning. So personally, we usually don't use soap. One common method used when cleaning cast iron pan is salt. To do that, you simply take some of your salt and dump it into the pan. Some people also like to put a little bit of oil in there as well. Once you have the salt and maybe some oil in the pan, take a clean towel, a paper towel, or a scrub brush and scrub really well. That salt will act as an abrasive, which will help roughen it up and get out all that food gunk. By the way, when choosing a salt, use the coarsest kind that you have. Kosher salt works pretty well. And if you're going to use a scrub brush, use the one that has the stiffest bristles. That will make your job a little easier. Now, as you're doing this, you may realize that there's some gunk that's really stuck on there. One thing you want to make sure that you never do though with a cast iron pan is soak it. If you soak your cast iron, it could possibly rust. And that's one of the things we're trying to avoid, remember? So instead what you can do is fill up your pan with water enough to cover whatever that gunk is. Then put it on the stove to simmer for 3 to 5 minutes. Once you've let it cool down a little bit, give it another scrape. Now, you may have to repeat this simmer, scrape, salt, scrubbing process a few times if it's particularly stuck on there. As a reminder, always clean your pans as soon after cooking as possible, and generally that will lead to the easiest cleaning. However, if you have a particularly well-seasoned pan, you may be able to avoid all of these steps and just simply get a clean towel and wipe out your pan. So if you find that cleaning is extremely daunting with your cast iron, maybe it's time to give it a good seasoning. Back to the washing process at hand though. Once you've cleaned out your cast iron pan and rinsed it out, dry it immediately. Don't let it air dry. You need to use a towel. If you let that water sit on there, it could lead to rust, which we're trying to avoid. To dry it out, just use a clean towel or a paper towel, but FYI, you may get some black stuff coming off the pan. That's a little bit of the seasoning. Because of that, you might not want to use your super nice dish towels for this. Use either a separate clean dish towel or a paper towel. One tip with the paper towels though, especially if you're using cheap paper towels, dab, don't wipe. If you wipe, it may tear and leave some paper residue behind. Trust me on that one, I'm speaking from experience. Another optional tip is to take that pan and put it back onto the stove and put it on medium-low. This will dry out any moisture that's remaining on the pan. Lastly, there's one more step you should do to maintain your cast iron, and that is oiling it. In reality, you don't have to oil it every single time you use it, but if you're only using your pan every now and then, you probably should. In a way, it's kind of like car maintenance. The more preventative maintenance you do, the less big, harder work that you'll have to do later on. When you decide that you are going to do that oiling step, we highly recommend that you do that stove drying process that we talked about. Once the pan is dry on the stove, cut off the heat and pour in about a tablespoon or so of oil. You can use plain old vegetable oil for this, or grapeseed oil. There's lots of options. You can look them up online. However, a lot of people tout 100% flaxseed oil as the best option. So you have the dry pan with a little bit of oil in it. Then you're gonna take your towel or a paper towel and spread that oil all over the pan, inside, outside, and the handles. This is going to help protect that seasoning and also prevent the pan from rusting. Taking care of 1 and 2. After you've spread that oil all around, grab another clean towel and give it one last wipe to make sure to wipe away any excess oil. You're looking for just a thin coating here. Phew! Man, I know that seems like a lot, but cast iron pans are amazing to use in the kitchen. And as we mentioned earlier, the more you use it, the better seasoned it's gonna be, the easier it's gonna cook with, and the easier it's gonna be to clean. And by the way, if you treat a cast iron pan right, it can last for many lifetimes.